diving into the third STEM Lighthouse podcast in our series of 3. I'm Adam Kulas, Director of Innovative Learning and Career Tech Ed in the Tacoma Public School District, and I'm joined by yet another all-star cast of individuals that are going to help our viewing audience dive into design. Diving into design today. So let's kick this off. We're gonna do a whip around. Just let the audience know kind of who you are, and just tell us a little bit about your story in terms of kind of how you arrived and just the connection to where we're at today.
I'm Andrew Van DeGoade. Teach at IDEA, one of the primarily foundations teachers, so a lot of freshman classes and then some upper level junior senior classes. How I got involved with IDEA, I knew a family friend had graduates from SOTA, and I'd heard of SOTA when I went to high school, and I was an artsy kid, but the idea of going to an all-arts high school was a little bit scary, I think. But it evolved, and it got its own really big reputation. And I was like, I kind of found my own path. I went to a bunch of different schools post-high to learn all of the skills that I wanted to learn, and I really regretted that I didn't get that in high school. And I was like, this is stuff we should all be teaching the high schoolers. And so I reached out and I was like, hey, I've heard about SOTA, I like the idea of it. And they're like, well, we're pretty good at SOTA, but we got this new school starting up. And they're like, what do you think about this? And I was like, this actually fits me a lot better. And I know we're probably talking about design and art and the difference there. I have a fine art background, but I love the design aspect of art and the analytical side of it. Much less artsy-fartsy and more how do we look at the visual world, decode it, understand it better, appreciate it better. So that's kind of what I try to get across my freshman classes there. A more analytical design-oriented way of approaching a basic art class.
Love it.
My name's Nico Valderabano. That's a Spanish name. Yeah. I'm a sophomore at IDEA High School. And I'm on taking the design path. So how I found IDEA was that my mom was talking with our neighbor, and she said that her daughter graduated from SOTA. And so me and my mom were talking about it, and it sounded like a really interesting school for me because I really liked the arts. And so I talked to my teachers about it, and one of them said that she used to work at SAMI, and she really recommended all 3 of the schools. And so growing up, I was very much art-based. I really loved art. I wanted to go into an art career. And so my 8th grade teacher, she really helped me expand my view on art, to understand it, the history of it, just where it's applied, all that. And so coming to IDEA, it really helped me broaden that spectrum because I've always wanted to design things, but incorporate storytelling and art into it. And so just to have that kind of organization, but still be able to have that freedom to do amazing things with graphic design and technology and still incorporate art, really made me happy to go to the school. So.
Love it.
Yeah, cool. Good morning, everybody. My name is Davon. I am the founder and owner of a local marketing agency called Route 586. And basically, I tell people we're in the business of storytelling, but through brand development and asset creation. And so I'm real new to this. It's been about a year and a half, but me and the young man I'm working with, Mr. Jermaine, so if you're watching this, shout out to Jermaine, have really been building something that's worth talking about. So in terms of the connection, I was born and raised in Tacoma, went to Lincoln, went to the University of Washington, so I've always kind of been right here. But as soon as I graduated, came back to Tacoma and started working with local nonprofits in education, college prep realm, and really just staying active in the community. Through the pandemic, went to the business route full time, which kind of led me to a summer program where at the end of the summer program, I met Adam at a speaking engagement that I was a part of, and we've been in connection, and he feels like I'd be a good fit for some of the work and some of the conversations we're going to be having today. So thank you for having me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Zach Martin. I've just started as the graphic design instructor at IDEA High School. I was teaching part-time last year as an adjunct, covering some web and app design classes, and then was really excited to come on full-time this year. I graduated from SOTA back in 2015, so happy to come back to kind of the community that really kicked off my interest in art and design. It was great to reconnect with some of my old mentors and teachers who are still part of the community. I graduated from Western Washington, majored in industrial design, product design, and then minored in user experience design. So I've been working in industry for 3-4 years, everything from product design, working in the medical field for a while, and then kind of transitioned slowly into more graphic design, user experience work over the last few years, working at Blue Origin for the last couple of years before coming on to join the staff full-time at IDEA, which has been super special. So I dabble in capital D design, love the art side of it, love the strategy across 2D and 3D media. So trying to bring kind of that broad perspective, especially into our foundation classes at IDEA.
Yeah, that's great. It's fun listening to the introductions. I think in terms of this series, you know, our goal was to unpack innovations in learning, and specifically how we can fuse multiple content strands and multiple approaches to different pieces that we want students to have access to. And so it's been fun listening to the intros specific to this third podcast, because there's this humble unpack of kind of what you guys are doing, and this fusion of long-standing commitment to community and just growing the future. And it's a really exciting topic in terms of design today. And so, you know, a couple outcomes for us is one, we want to, you know, unpack some of the different things we do through this continuum of folks that are looking to innovate in terms of what they currently do from a teaching practice and serving students. As always, like, super excited that we have a student in our conversation, because it's so relevant and exciting. So there's that outcome, but there's also this just beautiful piece of, you know, human-centered design, right? And really diving into the unique kind of exciting lane of taking a process, scientific and yet beautiful in terms of just its nimbleness, and kind of unpacking that. So, you know, we had a conversation kind of prior to this, short runway on purpose, because it is conversational, and I think I'm excited to sort of help just pose some questions that sort of surface some different pieces for listeners and viewers out there, but really just kind of continue to make connection. So with that, we're going to go to some natural places. With this humble unpack, there's this element of empathy that surfaces in design. And so just to kick this thing off, and we don't have to round robin everything, like, just feel free to chime in. Like, what role does empathy play in terms of design, in terms of appreciation for the art, and the art of design? Just let's riff on empathy a little bit, and if it teases into or leans into process a little bit, that's great too.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking just about how important in the context of design consulting, that process of listening to your client's needs is. We try to bake that into the classroom as much as possible. And in my classes last year, in the user experience design classes I was teaching, we front-loaded all of that user research, that competitive analysis, to really help, again, students understand the needs of their clients. That's the kind of foundational building block that the rest of the curriculum develops from. So it was great to hear, like, your perspective of doing a lot of that in industry. So trying to connect what we do in the classroom to what's going on in industry has been huge, and it absolutely starts with that empathy piece, that listening, and just being able to kind of understand the big picture before you start really diving into some of the kind of more specific traditional asset creation and some of those other steps that come later. But it was great to just emphasize that front end research and understanding.
Yeah, and I'll add to, like, a big part of it is, like, sometimes your clients don't always know what they need, right? And they have been working on ideas, like in the context of like businesses and organizations. You talk to folks that have so many ideas in their head, and it's your job in a sense to try to like untangle the knots. And so it's a lot of like listening, like you said, but then also kind of like the consulting piece kicks in when you're telling folks like, hey, I know you're requesting this, but based on everything we talked about your story and what you're trying to accomplish with this project, we need to go this way. And being able to earn their trust where they're like, okay, I'll follow you in that direction. So you definitely have to like listen, but also put like your own like ideas, maybe not necessarily all the way in the back seat, but make sure you're making them feel heard and giving them what they need in times where they might be unsure or just super overwhelmed with all the ideas that they have. So you have to be come into it with an open heart. You say, got to have a love for it.
I think that's what hits on the head about the difference between art and design too. Where art, not that it can't be empathetic and you have to empathize to create great art, but a designer has to be empathetic and listen to who are they designing for, and be willing to put it out there and then totally throw it away when the person you're designing for, the end user, is not in agreement with what you created. Right, so it's you have to have kind of a hard skin to develop something, design something, and then be told it's completely not the right direction and redo it.
Also, like that empathy, it comes with like patience, because like again, your clients can throw away your ideas because they don't like it. So like just being patient with them, like trying to understand, like, okay, well, if that didn't work out, let's try this instead, and just like have patience with that whole process of empathy and all of that.
Yeah. Going off of the process idea too, I know like when we work with folks, we try to introduce, especially early on, multiple ideas early on. So it's not just like, hey, this is one idea, we're moving with this, but it's like, hey, here's a couple different directions we could go. What do you love about this? What do you hate about this? Like, what kind of resonates with you and what you're actually trying to accomplish? And then that way they feel like they're heard, right? And that, like, what I realize is that to create is you're getting a very vulnerable piece of yourself to your clients. And so you kind of have to protect that as well, right? So being able to introduce multiple ideas kind of eliminates that room of like you being, like, for lack of better words, kind of shut out on your ideas or having your ideas neglected, because that can be draining. Yeah. And you want to be able to just focus on creating, right? So yeah, that piece of the process is super important.
Yeah, building those relationships like early on is so key. I loved hearing that, you spend kind of 3 meetings with your clients. You'd mentioned that you've got those kind of 3 foundational meetings before you even get into like pulling out a deliverables calendar or anything like that, just so that trust is built, because everybody's putting ideas out there. The client first and foremost, and they need to feel like they're heard. But at the same time, it's a two-way street. So I feel like that vulnerability is something that we try to talk about in the classroom, like in the context of critiques, just being comfortable, like sharing your work, and just emphasizing the importance of not getting married to any single idea, being open to your, like you said, that kind of spread of initial ideas, being open-minded at first, both yourself, and then trying to instill that open-mindedness with your client, I think is huge, because a lot of the times in my experience, they'll come in with at least they think it's a pretty concrete idea. Yeah. So a lot of that foundational empathizing work is kind of creating that two-way street. So, helping yourself understand their needs, but then also putting them, the team, the client, in a position where they're open to kind of moving maybe beyond some of those first ideas, because it's usually by the 5th, 6th, 7th, 10th idea that you really start maybe finding some gold. So yeah, that empathy piece is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and ideas as a school is very unique, very innovative in terms of approach, and I think as as in my role, I look at what lessons or pieces could be integrated into any traditional model, any comprehensive high school. We won't even limit to high school because I think part of our conversation is how can we get students access at an earlier age. But to set the stage from that perspective, Zach and Andrew, if you guys can you just unpack kind of the fusion of the two courses that you teach, and it'll be highlighted in terms of even our first and second in this series, where it's kind of this really cool interdisciplinary kind of fusion, but specific to the two lanes that you guys have. Can you unpack that?
Yeah, so we are the counterpoint to, you had Blake and Johnny on, so that's the engineering side. Blake gets the freshman for foundations, and then Johnny gets them, so woodworking and then into metal. And we're kind of that as well. Mine's called analog design. Not that I don't sneak in, I'm sneaking in the digital stuff as well to get them ready in there, but it's a lot of students, middle school, junior high, come to me and have never picked up a pencil. So there is that like motor skill development, but I focus on like the visualization, like developing those ideas. It's not about the polish of the final project. It's not about the, can you make it look real? There's aspects of that, but it's more about the design process. That's what I try and teach them that first year, professional presentation, and then just developing that visualization through drawing and iteration. And hopefully I've given them the design principles, the elements, the vocab, the how to be just a student, because we get, as for lack of a better word, a magnet school. We get lots of different, coming from all different scenarios, just getting everyone on the same page, and then I hand them off and I don't get to see them again for a whole year, but they go off to Zach, who introduces more graphic design, the digital side of things. Not exclusively, like I think we kind of are flip. I'm mostly analog, little digital. You're a little analog, mostly digital.
Yeah, absolutely. Just building on those foundational skills, all the projects we do. I mean, my class is really focused on kind of developing concrete skills in industry standard software like Adobe Illustrator. I taught Adobe XD last year, but all of those projects start with kind of foundational sketching, ideation. So there's yet to be a faster method than just whipping out a piece of paper and quickly moving through ideation or working together on the whiteboard. So those foundational skills are absolutely how we kick off our projects, but then in my class, introducing some of the physical tools that help bring polish to those analog ideation, kind of like rough sketches. So introducing a little bit of Illustrator, and then also showing students how to use Photoshop mockups to present their work in kind of industry standard ways. So beginning to kind of develop the tools that complement the kind of conceptual knowledge-based learning that they do in your class. But coming in with that vocabulary is crucial. I can't teach the tools until the foundational principles are in place. So, and being my first year, it's been just exciting to build on what's already there. There's plenty of room to kind of innovate within the context of the curriculum and really complement the skills that they're coming in with from Van's class already. So that's been super exciting.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think I'm chomping at the bit because Nico, you're currently engaged in a project, and so it was fun hearing you unpack that. And so it's a great way to highlight this learning experience, right? That's been delivered, and then your application to the real world. So I'd love for you to unpack just kind of that story, kind of what you're working on right now in terms of a rebrand.
Yeah, so for our first project, we did a logo design, and we got a choice to either do personal logo or like fictional brand or an actual brand. So I kind of jumped in like all the way in and did an actual brand. It's called Fat Cat Records. It's a record store in Seattle, and I really appreciate them because like they've always kept a consistent price for their old records, like 99 cents each. And so they're a really cool place. Like they're always super nice to their customers, but they have branding issues. So like their logo isn't that great. Like they have like no, I guess, simplicity to it. It's very complex and not as eye-catching as most brands are. So I thought that would be a great way to apply something real world to school and branding. And so I chose Fat Cat Records. So my kind of ideation was that their whole shtick is cats. And so I have a cat, and so I was trying to figure out, like, what does my cat do? Like, that also comes in with, like, music and records. And so I was remembering I was playing a record one day, and the record, like, stops. And so my cat gets curious, and she hops up onto the record, and it just starts spinning. And she's kind of muddy because she's an outdoor cat, and so she leaves little paw prints on it. And so our ideation sketches, that's where a lot of them came from, was just like, what do cats do, and then, like, apply it to actual records. And so, like, just looking at those stories and applying it, both real world places, things, and applying them to a brand really helped that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I love it. And I think the unscripted unpack of that by you was this really cool, like, real-time empathy affirmation, right? So you told all the personal connection. That being said, in design, oftentimes we're telling someone else's story. So, Davon, why don't you kick us off in terms of, like, this was cool because you have this connection to the store, to the brand, to the label. As you're meeting with new clients, new to this industry or not, but as you're meeting with new clients, and we talked about the listening piece, but let's continue that process. So we've gone through this, listening to understand, empathetic lens, right? Where do we go from there?
Yeah, process-wise, I mean, I wanted to commend you too, because having that choice to be like, hey, I can just make something up, or I can, like, go in and try to help a business or something that I believe in, and you chose the latter, is a sign of you, like, having a true, like, passion for what it is that you're doing. So wanted to note that. And on top of that, to answer your question, like, you have to, the foundation of our process is, like, serving our clients, right? So, like, that was a prime example of, like, leading with your heart, and, like, knowing that at the end of the day, we tell our clients, like, the job is not done until you're 100% happy with it. And we tell them at the very beginning, like, if there's something that you don't like even, like, if it's, hey, I like this, and everything looks good, and it's, like, visually pleasing, but it still doesn't represent what it is you're trying to communicate, we need you to tell us that. Like, you're not going to hurt our feelings. Like, we need you to be super, super transparent, because at the end of the day, what we don't want is for you to go through our whole process, and then you call us, 2 weeks later when you've really had some time and the excitement dies down, right? Where you feel like, oh, wait, like, I wish that had an accent here. I don't really like this font, or these colors are not the right shades, or all the little things, right? Or just simply the actual design or the illustration that we include it doesn't communicate what it is that you need to communicate. So we approach everything from this really, like, service-based mindset. And then, as I mentioned earlier, like, we go through our consultation where we really get to, like, figure out, like, what is the problem that we're solving, right? We go into what we call, like, a discovery session where we spend an hour with them, and we really just, like, it's super conversational. We get to dive into their story, what has worked for them in the past, what hasn't, in terms of marketing and branding, what are things that they're really hoping to accomplish in the future, and kind of just, like, their roadmap and just everything, right? Anything that's really relevant to their business. From the discovery, we go into ideation, where Jermaine or our design team will create, in our contract we say 3, but again, when you have so many ideas, sometimes it ends up being a little bit more. Sure. And we have a conversation around what are you seeing that you like and don't like, or that represents or is a completely misrepresentation of your business. And the client walks away. I mean, and they might not be seeing what's going on, but Jermaine is like, okay, like, I see that. And we had a client the other day ask us, like, how are you going to combine? Like, I said I like this idea and I like this idea. Like, I don't really see how you're going to combine it, so I'm not really feeling sure about, like, how we move forward. And we have to ensure them, like, that's not your job, Like, that's what the genius is here for, right? So we really, that's really how we even lead into our first draft. And then from there, because of all the love and time we've spent with the clients, we're able to get really close to a solid product by the time we do and present a first draft. So A lot of it is rooted in making the process super collaborative, and that way your clients feel heard, and even when they see something that might have been a little outside of the box of what they were envisioning, they trust the fact that we listened to them and we took the interpretation of what they're really trying to communicate and turned it into something that is like a visual representation of everything that they embody. So that's our full process, and like you mentioned, I'm new to this in the sense of experience, but like I feel like passion-wise, like we haven't missed the target yet, and clients have been really fulfilled with what we've been able to churn out. So yeah, leading with that service mentality will get you far. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't frame it in a better way in terms of just key words that make my heart smile as a human, right? So
Right.
It's this service-based mindset, like beautiful, and as educators, and ultimately synonym for educator is learner, right? And a learner currently in process and gaining all these pieces. It excites me when we immediately surface this relational piece and this relationship with design in terms of love of whatever we're creating. So let's dive into mindset a little bit. When we were kind of setting up for this, I use the term solution architect a lot, right? And so whether it's wanting to lose 20 pounds or whether it's wanting to build a new school or integrate a new program, it's so the design process, is so ingrained in kind of who I am, and I'll joke all the time, right? My 11-year-old, he's been implementing like design thinking since he was 5 years old, just because it's so ingrained in kind of who I am. But Zach, you had offered this piece around agile mindset, and that, like, I'm stealing it. It's filed. Like, I'm gonna start using it. And I think the other fun part to mention, career and technical education is this really cool access, like this gateway to pull individuals that are from industry, and then partner and create these really cool fusions to give students this learner experience that couldn't be replicated without it. And so, I remember we both sat on your interview. This is year one for you. I know you did some adjunct last year, but like this full meal deal year one.
Yeah.
Let's riff on mindset a little bit. And Nico, just as you process some of what kind of they're unpacking as kind of educators who get to serve students, I would love your perspective or lens on how it's translating in terms of the experience that they're providing.
Yeah, I think we're talking about this earlier, but especially in the context of design, the actual tools and techniques are just evolving so quickly. Like for example, we've got, even just within the last month, these new AI technologies, image generation technologies, that are really shaking the game up at an industry level, and again, developing kind of as in the middle of our curriculum. So we, not only in the classroom and in the industry, but as I think faculty have to be really, again, curious learners as well as educators, so we can stay up to date on those tools, and again, in the classroom, instead of teaching specific software, that's great, and we do try to get everybody really comfortable in the context of the software and the tools that they're using. But that first step is kind of implementing that learning how to learn mentality, making sure our students are leveraging all the resources that are available. So we spend the first few weeks just introducing visual reference libraries. There's so many assets out there that are kind of pre-made that you can start bringing into your work to, again, we don't want to spend time kind of reinventing the wheel. We want to spend our time creatively innovating and ideating. And so wherever we can save time and build on what's there, that's just more time you get to spend in the creative side of things. So just maintaining that flexibility. I encourage my students to Google it, find it, repurpose it, and yeah, because the software is going to change, but that curiosity, that ability to self-teach and just be kind of self-directed in finding those resources is really the kind of for me, the most important foundational kind of mindset
Yeah.
that we're trying to really create for our students.
Let's see, what do I want to say here? I feel, I'll just touch on, you mentioned CTE, and I didn't bring that up when I said, but I came to IDEA as a CTE teacher, so career technical education. So Zach, and we have quite a few of those at our school, which is unique. I know there's not a ton of those at every high school. And so it does bring a lot of resources to us as far as like industry knowledge. It also brings a lot, so I think more expectations. I'm always trying to satisfy, what does IDEA want for my class? What does CTE want for my class? What does the student want for my class? And then what do I think is important to touch on all those things? So it kind of as a balancing act, but what I do love about CTE, and it can seem overwhelming at times, there's these boxes we have to check. We have to have an advisory board where we reach out to industry. And while that can seem like a box to check, it's actually super helpful. Like Lance at Rotator. Like just checking with him multiple times a year, like what are you looking for in employees? Like what is the standard? And it comes back to that creative process. And while the software changes, while the tools are changing, it's a specific like skill set of problem solving, professional presentation. And CTE also asked us to do leadership clubs and things like this, which offers great. Nico's part of one of the leadership after school opportunities we have, and sometimes it seems like a forced thing at the very end of the day. Like it's like, okay, I'm teaching another class, but then you see like the roles the students take in those, and like how much fun they have engaging this into the school, the community, and like putting on contests and taking and just running it. And if you get it running like a finely tuned machine, it's not something I'm doing anymore. It's something that the students are completely running by themselves. And I'm just like, all right, let's check in, sign in, and go to work, guys. What's on the agenda today? So it's a lot of balancing, but it's a beautiful marriage, I think, of education and industry.
Yeah, and for us, like as students, how that translates is like, for us, it's very structured, but it's not just like, oh, like we're being taught a certain thing and it has to be turned in by this date. It has to look like this, blah, blah, blah. It's more like, okay, we have like that freedom and there's more empathy for our teachers because they have more empathy for us, like our learning styles, like our art styles, how we process like what we're designing. I feel like there's more empathy for each other and it's just better for us. And I think that's like what's also helping me like come up with these like ideas and designs is that like I have that freedom to do so. So yeah.
Yeah. Is it cool if I ask a question
Please.
to you guys?
Yeah,
and
please.
maybe all of you? Because I know like growing up, when I was going through school, one thing that I always, as a creative thinker, I was always kind of like nervous around like going into like art classes or like design-based classes because of how some people grade things, right? And so like, without overloading the question, like how do you guys approach grading when it comes to art and design, and like how has that worked for you and like reaffirming like your work? So yeah, one at a time, I guess.
Yeah.
Just to use like the logo project, Nico, that we're using, I really try to, I think traditionally, at least in my kind of design education, a lot of your grade or a lot of the emphasis through the grading is on that final product. And I'm trying to, I mean, that's important, and but I'm trying to give more literal weight to that process. And so, like for this logo project, the mood boarding and kind of strategy, that first step of empathizing is equivalently weighted to the final logo. Same thing with the sketches. You're getting just as much credit or just as much incentive to really start off strong with that foundational piece, instead of kind of focusing on that product. Obviously, we're still grading the logo, but really giving students, I think, more time and more resources to have that strong foundation and that strong narrative. Like Nico, your ability to tell that story, come up with that story of your own cat, and again, your experience with the brand you were working with, just like this community, this cornerstone of the community, keeping their prices consistent, just kind of being stubborn like a cat. translated super well into this series of logos. That story connected all of those concepts all the way from inception to the actual final logo, and it gave it like just a super strong background, which I think is why it was so successful. So just giving time to like emulate what we're doing in industry in terms of really focusing first on the storytelling, and then the product comes kind of naturally.
Yeah.
As a natural conclusion, natural answer to the questions you posed and took time to explore. So yeah, just moving emphasis away from product and really balancing out with processes is kind of how I'm trying to change the way we grade a little bit.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah.
Nico did probably, I mean, if you want to speak to my class, probably didn't have trouble in my class at all, because you love sketching, love drawing. Probably was just the submission of things. I'm a stickler for, like, it has to be, you have to spend the time on it, do it, and then get it submitted to me. I usually do it through a digital form. So it's analog class, but it has to be photographed and uploaded, so we've got a record of it somewhere. Makes it really easy to pull off student examples that way, too, and use it in other resources. But I focus on the process. And another thing I didn't mention is I have foundation, you've got foundation. We are a industrial design and engineering school. So students might choose us because they want to go down the design path. Students might choose us because they want to engineer, and we get them all. And so they're like, why am I in a design and art class when I came here to be an engineer? And it's like, fair point, great question. And then while I want to say, because it's going to make you a better, well-rounded person, creative problem solver, I usually have to find a assignment or strategy that is going to serve the engineers in my class as well as the designers and artists. And I guess that's a long way of saying, when it comes to the actual stuff we're doing, it's not about the polish, the finish. It's about the iteration, ideation, the getting it down on paper. It doesn't have to be pretty.
Yeah.
It has to, but it has to be. There has to be versions of it, and it has to be designed.
Yeah.
And so that's what I focus on. And I'm getting people of all different skill levels, and it's about the work that they're doing, the time they're putting into it, not that final product. Because in the end of the day, a beautifully drawn picture is not what the goal of that class is. It's about communication, I think, visual communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, like the first day of taking DeGoade's class, I was super nervous because I was like, okay, what if everyone hates my art? I was like super harsh on myself, like more than a normal artist would be. Like, of course, there's like that certain level of self-criticism, like constructive criticism, but for me, I was like overly harsh on myself. Like, oh, I did this wrong. Like, I should have followed a tutorial instead of like going by myself. But like that freedom to like be able to like have your own process while following a certain structure, that made me less nervous as an artist. And like just that whole grading like area, like you're graded on your process, and the final product is the product of your process, more than like you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you need to do better on that. It's less harsh than like an average art class would be. So yeah, it's like a breath of fresh air, honestly. Yeah.
Good.
That's a great question.
Yeah, a lot of folks go into like grading art like it's math, you know, and it's not, you know, there's some similarities, but it's not the same, right? We're in the sense of like, again, you're giving a piece of yourself to the world, and as an artist, it's dangerous, right? When you're getting critique that feels like you're being told to like, that like pushes you away from what you feel like is your purpose, you know, so yeah, I was just interested to hear a little bit more about that.
I think when I sit to grade art, I think it can feel subjective almost, and so I try to build in like really set standards, but that have a huge amount of like student choice and voice in there. So how you solve this problem is going to be different. And I usually say, here's what we're practicing, but there's no right answer here. Like, you are the designer, and you're going to be saying different things. There's no wrong answer. There's just consequences and what you choose. So if you choose to design it this way, it's going to look a certain way. It's going to tell a different story, and that might be what you're trying to say. But you just need to know what you're saying and how you're saying it.
Right.
Yeah, I think in terms of, I mean, there's all sorts of fun things to unpack. It could be its own series of podcasts, but I think I think I'm glad you asked the question, and I think it touches on this confidence piece, right? Confidence, student confidence, is very difficult to quantify, but it shouldn't ever stop us from that being a driver in terms of what we're building, because it is scary. It's scary to put product into the world. It's scary to and differentiated, right? So you get one student who is their first look at this, and then others that may have had a very different journey that are ready to just go. And so I think it's fun to continue to unpack those things. And I think there's lots of things that we continue to unpack in terms of, competency-based ed and really leaning into the process. And I think that was the through line here. And that excites me as a human, as an educator, as a dad, and everything else. But I think just more. And I think empowering youth voice in terms of telling us, this reflective piece, and very much aligned to design. So it's not even like we're straying away. Like, it's so embedded in the process. And I have, multiple Post-it notes at my computer, and kind of across my office where it's, in terms of my design cycle, it's rinse and repeat. Like, nothing's ever finite. It's like this infinite cycle. And I may land on a product that I ultimately would deliver for a grade or feedback and things like that. 3 months later, 3 days later, 3 minutes later, I'm playing with one of the arcs. I'm playing with one of the colors, and I think that's the beauty and this really cool illustration of what ultimately, like what we strive for in terms of building learner experience for students to dance in that world. So we're coming to kind of the conclusion of our time. I think I would love to kind of exit this session with a couple different pieces. One, I think in terms of anyone viewing or listening in, kind of who's on the fence and really wants to start being more intentional with delivering design. And we were having a cool conversation about how design thinking, shout out to the D School. I said I'd give a shout out because they're mission driven in terms of wanting to just put the good stuff out into the world. Lots of free resources. Simultaneously, we talked about how it's fun to take these different models that are very science-based and have this just beautiful unpack, and then make that fit your community of learners and just you as a artist, as a designer, as a leader, as an educator, as a learner. But what advice would you give anyone tuning in around where to start? And I think we have some really cool perspective. Because you have a very unique, innovative journey in terms of like the Montessori piece and then into a school-like idea, much more traditional, but always this underlying passion, and now you're doing it. You guys have very unique backgrounds. What advice would you give to people tuning in around just that first step?
I think it comes back to conversation. I think that's what brought me onto the job. Just talking to one of my teachers at SOTA, Melissa Moffitt, who was my mentor back in the day. We just started talking about kind of my experience, and that kind of got me interested in education as a whole. And then now that I'm in the context of stepping into that role as an educator, again, continuing to talk to industry experts, local kind of leaders, thought leaders in the context of design, and just making that connection between kind of the student and the career, and through those kind of those personal connections and conversations like these, and just staying curious and just continuing to be a learner as an educator is huge. So we don't fall behind, and so we can continue to innovate within the curriculum.
Yeah, I would say, like, don't think you know everything. Like, always keep that open mind. Like, you could learn something new, no matter what it is. Like, even if you've had, like, 10 years of experience specifically in that field, you think you know everything. But then someone comes along and, like, says, no, you could do this differently, and it works better, actually. And so, like, some people become closed off that, like, a specific structure is the only way it's going to work, which isn't true, because art is always, like, changing. Like, there's new things that are being added to it every day. So, like, keeping an open mind, like, not even just thinking you know everything, like, thinking that you'll never learn. how to be like a better artist than you already are.
Mm.
Like just not to be so harsh on others, but also not harsh on yourself.
That's why I got into art actually, is because I looked at it from abroad. I'm like, there's so much to art and design, and it's like I'm never gonna learn it all. It's not something I was like, I'm gonna learn this and then I'm done, and I can like sit back. It's like it's gonna keep me hungry. And at my very first like traditional art school I went to, someone made it, like an older student made a really good point. It's like as soon as your skills level up, your expectations like exponentially level up. So it's like you get a little bit, and then you're like, I want to hit here, and then you get a little bit, and you want to hit here. And so yeah, keeping that hungry mindset. And what I tell students, just part of that process, like your first idea is rarely your best idea. And you have a lot of learning to do from yourself. It's like, okay, I think this is good. I think this is good. Wow, this is really good. So throw it all out there, see what works, pick and Frankenstein it together, and come up with something beautiful. Everything's a remix. I know we were talking about that.
Yeah. Being comfortable with that idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you said that too, because the one thing that was coming to my mind is this: we tell folks that we go through this process of like refinement, right? And so building on that idea is this idea of you have to find, when we meet with clients, we tell people like, my superpower is that I love writing. I love like communicating and like putting the narrative behind things. Jermaine's superpower is like graphic design and really being able to take a message and then turn it into a visual representation, right? And so you have to know what your superpower is and like really hone in on that instead of trying to do everything and anything, because that's where you start to build confidence, is when you know like, no, I was built to do this, right? Or I have this innate ability and desire to like execute on this type of work. And so I would say, outside of like giving yourself that grace of knowing like your first draft is not going to be your final draft. I always used to tell kids that when we're working on like college essays, your first draft is never going to be your final. Or it shouldn't be, at least, because there's always, no matter how good the first draft is, you can probably make it a little bit more what it's supposed to be. But also just understanding that like the more you dive into your purpose, the more you can exist in a confident mindset and pull in the support that you need from other places when opportunities come that are not in your realm of your superpowers. So yeah, that's a little bit, but
no, it's a beautiful segue, and
Yeah.
kind of put a bow on this this STEM Lighthouse series. Super appreciative of the opportunity to run these, and to your point, it'll be exciting for us to launch into our next based on these conversations. So appreciate all of you being here today. Stay tuned for more, and we're a wrap.
yeah,
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Appreciate you.